Hey everybody, MS Farzan here, and in this video I'd like to talk to you about what's called the feedback triage. I think I've mentioned in previous videos that the way that we're developing Entromancy, the role-playing game, is based off of a model of video game development, and one of those processes in video game development is called the feedback triage, where your community manager or maybe the developers or producers of the game will go through all of the different feedback that they're receiving from QA, from the community, from community forums, from social media, everywhere, and create a spreadsheet of some sort that collects all of the different types of feedback that you're receiving about a game. And then the developers are able to go through that feedback sheet and triage through them, essentially look through them and decide the importance of each piece of feedback and weigh them against each other to determine the best way forward when it comes to figuring out how to implement those different bugs or those different requested features or different comments. The reason why the feedback triage is so important is that it allows the developers or the designers or whoever is working on the game to determine what are the high priority issues that are being reported across the board. If there are, let's say, 20 comments about one issue that seems like it's game breaking, then that's probably something that we want to focus our time on rather than one comment on another issue that is just about the user interface or the design that may be not appealing to one person but no one else has really commented on it. It's a bit of a tricky process because sometimes one person can come across a game-breaking bug that just absolutely needs to be fixed immediately, and even though they're the only ones who have stumbled across it. But other times you might get 100 pieces of feedback that are, again, about a light feature that could be implemented perhaps after the game launches and isn't really that important. So it's a process of negotiation between the feedback that is being received, the feedback that is being asked for, as well as conversations that happen between the developers and the designers themselves regarding what they want to implement and what's the most strategic way to implement them at any given point in time. So we've tried to tap this model for the Entromancy role-playing game, although I'm not sure how other designers and developers do it. We're using this model, the video game model of triaging feedback, and we have a few different ways of collecting feedback that we're sifting through and attempting to make the game better because of them. The first one is we have a general player survey that whenever we do play tests, we send out that survey, and we've aimed to target those questions to get the most meaningful amounts of feedback from our play testers. This has required some soul searching on our part to determine what are the best questions to adequately and accurately capture the feedback of our playtesters, which is no easy task because we could just ask questions like, "How did you like the game?" and then a person could, with an open-ended answer, say something like, "I like the game," or "I didn't like the game," and then we've learned nothing from that, which is not really that helpful, and that's our fault. So we've tried to ask meaningful questions like starting with, "Did you have fun playing the game?" which is our most important question because we want to make sure people are having fun. But then we want to ask questions about specific classes, about balancing, about anything getting in the way of people having fun, which is a tip that I received from my RPG mentor, Craig Campbell, who is from Nerdburger Games. And he's been doing this for a while, so he's kind of helped us to gain perspective on what's the best way to get feedback from playtesters and so on. And it's been a really interesting process of getting all of that feedback in and then making sense of it with the feedback triage. Before we talk about the triage itself, I also want to let you know that we have an internal feedback form, which is essentially a Google spreadsheet that has several different columns that deal with the nature of the feedback, the theme of the feedback itself, who's going to be implementing it, what it relates to, what each of our comments are on the design team. And I'm finding that it's a really nice place for us to collect all of our thoughts and collect all of our internal feedback, and sometimes bring in feedback from playtesters and put it in there. And what it also provides is a place for us to put feedback that we're receiving from, let's say, consultants that have looked at our game, or even notes that whenever we do a playtest, I sit down and I take a bunch of notes and I put them in an email form. And I send it to my design team, and we can all kind of poke at it and crunch on it and think about it. But we try and shift as much of the implementable feedback into the Google spreadsheet as possible, and really create a funnel where everything, all the feedback that we're collecting from playtesters, from consultants, from our own conversations, go into that feedback spreadsheet, and then we look at it together during our design call. We have a weekly call together where we look at our feedback and we decide what's implementable, what do we want to shelve for a later time. And a lot of times we do find things that don't go into the master feedback sheet. Maybe it's something that we've just decided over email, and then one of us will pop into the game design document and just make the change right there, or we'll decide to put it on the back burner. But the one thing that we're really learning and benefiting from looking at this process is having a centralized location where we can keep all of the feedback that we're gaining from all of these different places, and just keep funneling all of that feedback there, so that we have, in essence, a matrix which allows us to see and search for the types of issues, like are these gameplay issues or gameplay design concerns or comments, or can we look at all of the classes in our game together if we want to dive into a specific class on that feedback, or does it have to do with layout or design? We can search by those terms. And we also have a place where, and this is really important for us, where we can do asynchronous triaging of the feedback, meaning that we don't all have to be looking at that feedback at the same time. There's a column for me, there's a column for my two game designers, where we can each provide our feedback on that feedback, and then determine on our weekly call what we want to do with that feedback. And that's really what the triage is. It's looking at all of the feedback as a whole, and then determining what's the best route forward, what are the things that we can in essence live with right now, that we don't want to change, or that we think are not high priority issues, or maybe not issues at all. They could just be subjective pieces of feedback that we don't need to address immediately. What are the things that we can put on the back burner? For example, we come across a lot of feedback that either from our own internal discussions or from play testers, that there are different systems we could add, or different classes we could add, or different features for those classes. And some of those things we'll just say, all right, well, let's just leave this for another time. Maybe this will be an add-on or a module that comes out after the full game comes out, or maybe it's something we can look into later. And then we look at specific issues that need to be addressed either right now, or as we move towards the Kickstarter, as we move towards creating the final manuscript and the final game. And that process is really the feedback triage, is deciding between, let's say, high, medium, and low priority issues, while having a matrix where we can look at everything with a wide angle lens, and stay organized about it. I'd say probably those two aspects, staying organized with our feedback and also being able to work asynchronously, is working out really well for us. I wouldn't have it any other way. I'd be interested to hear from any developers and designers of specifically role-playing games or tabletop role-playing games out there. I'd be interested to hear about what your process is regarding triaging feedback or collecting feedback. I imagine there's got to be some sort of versioning that you use, similar to, like, if you're a programmer, similar to something like Forks on GitHub, that where you're able to collect different feedback and have different versions of your game. We're using a video game design mentality with this, which is why we're using the feedback triage mentality, and I'm sure that it's something similar. Yeah, if you have a comment about that, or if you have experience with that, please let us know. I'd love to hear what you're doing and see if we can learn from you as well. So thanks for watching. We'll have more on the Entromancy role-playing game in this series. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and follow me on Twitter for more crunchy content.